I am taking your exploitation movie recommendations. There are a lot, so I'm making my way through them, and I'll be discussing with you 5 of them at a time. So a little repetition disclaimer. The 5 films I'm going to be talking about today are also going to be discussed or have already been discussed in my monthly What I Watched videos. And I've already reviewed them on my Letterboxd. So if you follow me there or if you watch my monthly videos, you're going to hear about these films more than once. But I'll try to say some things here that I didn't say in other places. And finally, whether or not a film qualifies as exploitation is sometimes a gray area. It's up for debate. What I'm doing, well, I'm taking your recommendations, so I'm kind of taking your word for it, but I'm also like, I'll check on like Grindhouse database or something and see if it's in there. But, you know, it's up to individual judgment, so feel free to argue below. So now let's talk about the 5 new exploitation films I have watched per you. So first of all, Larry recommended a nunsploitation movie because it had Susie Kendall in it also. So I went for that one pretty quick. Story of a Cloistered Nun is an Italian film from 1973, and I watched it on YouTube. When I think of nunsploitation, I think of it as being very trashy or sleazy or making a mockery of Catholicism or being generally blasphemous. But it turns out that is not always the case. So basically, nunsploitation, as I've said in other videos, is depicting nuns doing things they shouldn't be doing. So this film does fit that qualification, but it's kind of like a tragedy, like a tragic play. It's a period drama. It's not really like a fun time. It's a serious time, but it's really, really beautifully shot. And the actors are great. I loved Susie Kendall in this role, and I loved the lead. Her name was Eleonora Georgi. So it's about this girl, she's a noble, and this is like the freaking 1500s or something, or 1600s, I don't remember. She's a noble, and her parents want her to marry this one guy, but she ends up falling in love with a peasant, and so she refuses to marry that other guy, and her parents just straight up disown her and send her to a convent. So we get to watch life in the convent, and I think it was really interesting, and again, gorgeously shot. And I'm trying to remember like how much sex is in the movie. There is some like sexual activity, but it's not like titillating, as they say. It's part of the story, you know. And there is a little bit of violence in the movie, but it's, you know, not for thrills. Even though it's not necessarily my type of movie, I thought it was really good, and I would probably watch this again because it's just so beautiful. If I had to give this a grade, I'd probably say like a B+. Okay, next up was a splatter film. I watched the Gore Girls from 1972. This was recommended by Rob from Exploitation Reviews here on YouTube. I actually reviewed it with him on his channel, so I will link that above and below. So go check that out. Yeah, this is a splatter film, meaning there's a lot of like gore and violence. Like violence is key here. It's very similar to a giallo in that there is a killer who is going around killing strippers, and this PI and this reporter team up to try to find out who is doing this. It's a Herschel Gordon Lewis film. It seems to be very low budget. It's not really like the best movie ever. It's got a weird tone. Like, it's very much like a comedy, but the laughs are funny. The most noteworthy thing here in the film is the gore and the stripping. There's so much stripping. There's so many stripping sequences. They just go on. And then a lot of gore, like snipping boobies with scissors, or was it a knife? I don't remember. And like a meat tenderizer to someone's butt and just like beating it to a pulp. Like, there's a lot. There's a lot going on, and it's pretty interesting. Gore Girls I watched on Tubi, and yeah, I think this is a great example of exploitation cinema as I've come to know it so far, in that violence and nudity are very highlighted. Would I watch it again? I don't know, maybe, maybe. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I doubt I'm gonna have like a hankering for it. But I gave the movie a C. I think it was a necessary thing for me to witness on this journey. So thanks, Rob. Next up was Foxy Brown from 1974. This was in my to-watch stack because Brian sent it to me on DVD. But it was also recommended here on YouTube by DeadRinger22000. Oh, and also recommended by Mudstyle. This is, of course, a blaxploitation film. This is a Jack Hill film starring Pam Grier. So you know what you're gonna get, right? And I do think this film is a lot like Coffee, but I would say I like this one just a little bit better than Coffee. This film is about a lovely lady named Foxy who, you know, she's living a good life, but her brother is in trouble a lot. Some stuff happens with the brother and she gets catapulted into this world of drugs, prostitution, and crime for some revenge. You know, you get a lot of great things from these films, particularly the fashion. I just think just any time with Pam Grier on screen is precious. Oh yeah, also shout out Sid Haig. Sid Haig is in this one too. What's up? We get some cool music and it was just a good story. I had a lot of fun with this one. I don't have too much to say about Foxy Brown for some reason, but I am really glad that I own it and I will definitely be watching it again. I'm looking over some reviews to jog my memory and some people are complaining about some of the acting, which it was like, there were some actors where I'm like, oh, they suck. And then like the next scene, they'd be doing so much better. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, you know, I kind of had similar feelings throughout, but I just liked this. And I think I'm just gonna give this one an A-. I don't know. Next, this is the big one. Female Prisoner number 701, Scorpion from 1972. This is a Japanese women in prison film, and it probably falls into like some other exploitation categories, but I didn't look it up. And this was recommended by so many people. Alan, Saku, Briggs, and Quantum Paradox, and probably more, so I'm sorry if I didn't name you. I watched this on Tubi, and it's starring Meiko Kaji, who was Lady Snowblood. So that's why a lot of y'all recommended this one. But it's about this lady who gets like screwed over and imprisoned, and then she just becomes this like revenge monster. It is a very interesting film. The main thing I have to say about this is the style was like through the roof. This is the prettiest, most stylistically beautiful movie I have ever seen. I don't know why all movies aren't shot like this. What are we doing? Meiko plays Matsu, and she's a really interesting character. She barely speaks, but she's like always got a plan, I think. But I'm not quite sure what she was trying to do sometimes. It's just like she was trying to be difficult throughout the whole movie. It's not like she was playing the game. It's not like she was scheming. She was just like being hard-headed the whole time. Anyway, so this movie is very bleak. Despite that, it does have this like poppy comic book manga feel to it sometimes. It is very dark, like there's a lot of torture, just this tone of you're never getting out of here. So there is some violence and some of that spurting blood that I like so much, and there is some sex, but this is not fun sex. This is like cold and unwelcoming sex, and there is some rape, which, you know, I hate. I mean, who doesn't? But I don't really like to see it in movies. Unfortunately, here I am in the exploitation world, so it's definitely gonna happen. One of the rapes is like the most beautifully shot rape I've ever seen. Am I gonna get in trouble for saying the R word? One of the grapes is one of the most beautifully shot grapes I've ever seen. And then the other type of grape, if you know, you know, it's like in the warehouse. I don't want to say it was hilarious, because nobody deserves it, but like, oh, okay. I watched this on Tubi and I really liked it. I really loved it. So thank you to all of you who recommended it. I know there is at least one sequel. Is there 2 sequels? I don't know, I could Google it, right? But I like wondering. I'll give this an A, like not a plus, not a minus, just an A. And finally, the last movie I'm gonna be discussing in this video is Cathy's Curse from 1977 as Canucksploitation. Canucksploitation, which means it's Canadian. I love Canada. If you're a Canadian, I love you. I love Canada a lot. I've been to Canada. You don't want to hear about this, but my favorite TV show is Degrassi. It's Canadian. I've learned a lot about Canadian culture over the years. One thing I did not know was the word Canuck. Canuck is like a slang term for a Canadian. I hope that's not a bad word. I'm not saying a bad word, am I? Cathy's Curse was recommended to me by T800. This is a horror movie. I watched it on Tubi, and it's about this family that, like, the dad grew up in this mansion and he moves his family back into the mansion after his wife has like a nervous breakdown. I guess they needed to like stay somewhere else. Then the house is like, it's like haunted or something. All the paranormal phenomena that take place, they are centered around the family's daughter. She's a little girl named Cathy. Right, Cathy is not a grown-up. Cathy is a child. I didn't know children could be named Cathy. This film cashes in on films like Poltergeist. Like, I got a little bit of Poltergeist themes, The Omen, The Exorcist, just, you know, those types of big name horror movies of the time. Or was Poltergeist like the 80s? I don't remember. The film is exploitation in that sense that it was just kind of like cash grabbing, like hopping on the popularity train. But even though this is presumably a low budget film, I think it was really well made. We had a nice set, the actors were great, and there were a lot of scenes in the movie that were quite memorable and noteworthy, whether they were funny or just creepy or just pretty to look at. Cathy, I don't think I'm spoiling too much when I say like she starts acting out, okay? So when she has these like moments of acting out, it's very jarring. It like got me a few times, you know? I think it was pretty watchable and pretty good, but by the end, I realized like it wasn't gonna get tied up in this neat little bow, and several of the things that needed addressing never got addressed. But I still think it was overall a lovable movie, especially because of the handyman. If you've seen the movie, you know. And I love a horror movie. I love the supernatural stuff, so it was a nice watch. Okay, and those are the 5 exploitation movies recommended by you that I have seen so far. I think that was a nice little mixture. We got splatter, blaxploitation, nunsploitation, canucksploitation, and women in prison. That was a nice variety. Thank you guys for your recommendations and just for talking exploitation with me, talking movies with me. I think it's super fun. This is a fun outlet for me. I will be continuing this series, so don't give me any more recommendations because I've got like 70. Just kidding, keep them coming. And that's all for today, my friends. Ciao for now.